We have a new patient in Camera Hospital. This time it's a 1956 Zorki C, or should that be a Zorki S because it's a Cyrillic letter C. Anyway, I'm not planning to do a full strip down video on this one, but there are a few things that I want to look at. Firstly, that the Industar 22 lens wouldn't go all the way to its infinity lock. I'm pretty sure that this was just because someone had taken it apart at some time and reassembled the focusing helicoid at the wrong starting point. I've put it back to how it was when it arrived, and you can see that the flange at the rear is already hard up against the mount, so it's never going to reach the lock. If I remove the end stop screw and unscrew the helicoid, it disengages at around the 1.7 metre mark. Then if I rotate it until the next start point is in that position, I probably should have used a wider lens for this because it's not so easy keeping it in frame or in focus. And screw it back in. Now the flange meets the mount at the infinity lock position as it should do. But all is not well with this lens. If I back it away from the mount, just look at the end float and slop in the helicoid. Sure, the grease has dried out, but unless they used a really thick and goopy grease, I can't imagine it taking up all that amount of movement. And remember that the back flange of the lens here moves the rangefinder follower, and that much slop will mean that the focus will be all over the place. The tolerances look terrible. I doubt it's mechanical wear, so was it really manufactured that badly? I guess I'll try my thickest grease and see how it feels. If necessary, I'll pop on this Industar 26 instead. It's not quite as cute and compact, but at least it should work. Other issues, the film advance is much stiffer than it should be. That'll just be old dry lubricants. And if I set it to 1/25th of a second and fire the shutter, that's way slower than 1/25th. In fact, looking at the right hand side, the rear curtain hasn't even closed fully. Not that it's all that easy to spot on these, because you can't open the back to take a peek inside. Other than that, it's in fairly nice condition, so I think I'll start by cleaning up the lens and re-greasing that helicoid, and I'll report back in a minute. Unsurprisingly, although the lens now feels better with a bit of grease on it, it still rocks around like a crazy thing. It can't possibly have been manufactured like that, so I can only assume that someone has done something to it in the past. Also, looking at the front element, I think someone has cleaned the thing with a Brillo pad, so I guess I'll keep my eye open for a replacement and use the Industar 26 for the time being. Actually, I might be being a bit unfair about the glass. I can pop it on a digital camera to see how good or bad it is optically. Or even better, I can throw some outdated film in the Zorki and make sure I don't drop below 1/100th of a second, which is where the curtain fails to close fully. Well, that didn't entirely go to plan. The idea was to shoot about 5 frames, then cut the film in the dark bag, saving the rest for another day. But I was enjoying myself so much that I ended up taking about 15 shots, until the camera ground to a halt. When I got it home into the dark bag, the take-up spool came out, but the film canister was stuck solid. More to the point, the take-up spool was empty, and I couldn't feel what was wrong. So I had to take the camera out of the dark bag to look, and the film had managed to detach itself from the take-up spool, wrapping itself round the sprocket drum instead. Once I knew what had happened, I was able to extract the film in the dark bag, and I only lost the outer 5 or so frames. So what did I find out from this experiment? Well, the camera needs a service, we already knew that, but if I keep the lens held against the camera with my spare hand, it actually functions reasonably well, and the focusing is about right. I'll still keep my eyes peeled for another copy of the Industar 22, but at least I can use this one for the time being. I'll pop a few of the test shots on screen now, and then return to the camera body. This one was shot wide open in pretty dim lighting, and it's about what I expected. The next shot was something like f5.6 and the focus is more or less in the correct place. I can't remember what aperture I was using for the next few shots. It was relatively bright, so I suspect I was using f8 or f11. They're not going to win any awards, but they're relatively okay all the same. And then it all started to go wrong, and we've got some scratching and light leaks from where the film jammed in the camera. So now it's time to take the thing apart. The lens wants to come off, and I'll put that safely to one side. Then the lens mount needs to come off. There are 4 screws securing it, and there will be paper shims behind the mount. These need to be retained and their orientation recorded because these set the flange distance correctly. The 4 screws pass through the camera body into some threaded metal plates behind. They're a little fiddly to replace, which can be somewhat frustrating. The one with the cutouts goes at the top. Then there are 9 screws to remove, 4 in the body to the side of the lens, 3 along the front rim, and 2 along the back rim. I usually find that some screws are crudely cut to shorter lengths on Zorkis and Feds, so I tend to keep them in a piece of card so I can install them in the same positions when refitting them later on. And theoretically, if I hold the rangefinder follower out of the way, the entire lower body should just slide off. Thusly, the pressure plate and its 2 springs are free to come out now. And the pressure plate is somewhat scratched. I suspect that a previous owner used a screwdriver or something similar to hold the plate out of the way when loading a film. I'll polish those out before I reassemble the camera. And talking of reassembly, the pressure plate needs to be pushed back against its springs before sliding the mechanism back in. Something non-scratching like a cotton bud will do the trick. So back to the main assembly. The rewind spindle is extremely gummed up and tight. I suspect that this might have contributed to the test film pulling out of the take-up spool. All the gears for the film advance and shutter cocking are gummed up with dry old grease and are far tighter than they should be. I could simply re-oil these, but I think I'll probably strip it all apart and remove the old grease before relubing the thing. IPA and the like doesn't tend to shift this old grease, so I'll be turning to my bottle of paraffin for that job. And I've just spotted how scored the film guides are. I'll just carefully remove the highs from these so that the film runs smoothly. Anyway, next the top cover needs to come off. As always, this isn't a how-to video, it's just for general interest, but I may as well show the top cover removal because it's a little bit more involved than on some cameras. There's only 1 screw that needs to come out of the cold shoe, this one at the rear nearest the shutter speed knob. It's not the end of the world if you undo the others too, but if you fail to get the top off, you'll have a metal plate rattling around inside the camera. Set the camera to a known speed, I'll usually go for bulb, and then slacken the 2 grub screws securing the shutter speed knob, which should now just lift off. Set the flash delay to 0 and remove the grub screw at the front, and that should also lift off. Now the rangefinder and viewfinder covers need to come off. Sometimes you'll get lucky and they'll come off with a friction device like a sheet of rubber, but more often than not you'll need a collet wrench or whatever they're called, and it doesn't seem to matter how many of these I make, I still don't have the correct size. So here's yet another one that I've just made out of some scrap aluminium. This gives me a nice even grip all around the edge, and with very little effort the first cover is now free and moving. The rangefinder wedge also needs to come out. These do have notches in them for a wrench, but they can still be a bit stubborn. The wedge is used to adjust the vertical alignment of the rangefinder, and it's usually stuck into the holder with black paint or bitumen, which needs to be cleaned out before the wedge itself will turn. Although this one actually looks quite clean, so it might be okay without cleaning. The film advance knob needs to be removed. There's a screw in the side and then the knob should unscrew. It's a standard right hand thread. Beneath that is the counter disc, with a brass disc beneath that. There are also shims between the counter and the brass disc, and also below the brass disc, or at least there are on my example. There's a grub screw in the knurled rim of the rewind release knob. Once undone, the knob should unscrew. The screw between the two eyepieces on the rear of the camera wants to come out, and although you could probably leave it in place, I'll remove the screw that covers the horizontal rangefinder adjustment on the front. Lastly, there are two screws located beneath the frame counter disc, and with that the top cover should ease off. It's quite an interference fit, but it should eventually wriggle free. The tube section for the viewfinder is screwed into the rear of the cover, but it also locates into the rangefinder housing, so I'm pretty sure that rear screw needs to come out to remove the cover. Okay, I'm going to go away and get everything cleaned up before I move on to the next stage. Next off will be the rewind knob. There's a single screw that goes into a keyway cut into the upper shaft. Once removed, the knob can be pulled out. Then the collar beneath that is free to come off, and the lower section can be eased downwards until it pops out at the bottom. It's a little bit of a friction fit on my example, but here it is with a rather crudely made spring to give it some tension. This metal disc will also fall out at this stage, and there's also a washer between the spring and the bottom of the rewind shaft. Now I can start digging into the main mechanism. I'm sliding the camera body back on where possible, just because it gives me something to grip on. If I remove this screw in the back of the shutter button tube, it will release several components all at once. These are the shutter button itself, the rewind release collar, and the shutter button shaft, which passes through a short and long sleeve, with a spring around the outside. Oh, and I missed out this shorter spring that sits inside the rewind release collar. Anyway, those are all cleaned so they can go away until it's time for reassembly. Next, the grub screw in the side of the sprocket drum gear can be slackened, which should, in theory, allow me to remove a slotted collar accessed down the shutter button tube. But having made a suitable tool, the collar is so tight that I'll leave it in place and just work round it for now. I should be able to lubricate it well enough without removing those parts. The film advance drive can be removed, starting with the shaft at the bottom of the film take-up spindle. And that was surprisingly loose. I could do it with my fingers. On that shaft is a washer and a spring, and it also secures the inner drive hub for the take-up spool. Then there are two screws on top that secure the anti-reverse rotation clutch. That releases the metal block which traps the end of the spring that forms the clutch. Then there's a lock screw in the side of the film advance tube, which, once removed, will allow the whole assembly to come out for cleaning. It's currently covered in a really old grease which definitely won't help with a really tight film advance on this camera. And the two intermediate gears can come out. The one closest to the sprocket drum has a left-hand thread, just to catch you out. Next I'll remove the flash sync assembly, which has two screws at the back, and a single screw at the front. This all needs a good clean, although the chance of me ever wanting to use flash with this camera are about 0. The shutter speed index can be removed from the main shutter shaft by inserting a thin rod through the hole to act as a handle. One of my small jeweler's screwdrivers does the trick. Once that's off, the shutter speed selector arm can lift out, along with the spring, and a washer that goes on the thread of the index section. The moving end of the second curtain brake spring can be carefully lifted off the pin and allowed to sit below the brake. And then the curtain brake, complete with its shaft, can pull upwards and out of the camera body. This next part can be a little stubborn, and on occasions I'll work round this if it doesn't want to move. But there's a screw securing the shutter speed disc to the main shaft, and theoretically, once the screw is out, the disc can be removed from the shaft. On this occasion it's moving easily enough, with the aid of a couple of screwdrivers and some card to protect the top surfaces of the camera. The upper curtain shield can come out. It's secured by 2 screws through the top of the camera that pass through the shield and into a metal plate, which will simply fall out once the screws are removed. The rangefinder will also want to come out. This is held in place with 3 screws, 2 of which are a little fiddly to get at. The cam follower arm should wriggle out of the top plate without having to remove it first. And there are some shims between the rangefinder and the top plate that'll want to be reinstalled when the camera goes back together. It isn't lost on me that I said I wasn't planning to do a full strip down video on this camera, yet I appear to be doing just that. Anyway, I'll slacken the tension off the curtains now. I usually like to make a note of the preload when I take the camera apart, because it gives me a pretty good starting point for reassembly, unless someone has already tampered with it, of course. Probably a little fiddly to do on camera, but this is the spring for the front curtain, and if I remove the lock screw, and then slacken the lock nut, which is a left-hand thread, I can count the number of turns until the preload is gone. About 4.5 turns in this case. I did the rear curtain off camera and it had about 3 turns of preload, but in both cases the shafts were so gummed up it was difficult to feel exactly when all the tension had been released. This isn't a problem because a certain amount of tension juggling will be required to get the timings right later on. The 2 screws securing the leaf spring for the shutter release can come out. This will also release the lower curtain shield along with its threaded metal plate. As a reference for reassembly, I've penned round the rear curtain cam, which should help when reassembling the camera, although it's not essential. Just 3 screws in the top plate now, and once those are out I can carefully wriggle the shutter assembly apart, being careful to note things like the spacer at the bottom of the front curtain drum and the thrust washer or washers beneath the main curtain drum. And having got to this point, I think it's a good time to end the video. I've got plenty of cleaning to do. Ideally I'll split the main drum and the pulleys apart, but I'll make a decision on that later. If you've enjoyed watching, please like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel, not forgetting to click on the bell icon so you get notifications when future videos are released. I'll hopefully get part 2 done in a week or so. That's it for now, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a future video.